Okay, let's unpack this. There is something we do for roughly 1/3 of our entire lives. It's absolutely biologically non-negotiable. If you don't do it, you die. And yet, for so many of us, it is the hardest thing in the world to actually do. It is the great paradox of the human condition. Isn't it totally? I'm talking obviously about sleep. If it's as vital as eating, as breathing, but unlike breathing, you can't just force it, right? In fact, the harder you try to wrestle your brain into sleep, the further away it gets. It requires this. A psychological act of total surrender. Something modern humans are notoriously bad at. Exactly. And that is exactly what we are diving into today. I have to say, looking at the stack of sources, we've pulled together for this deep dive, it is chaotic. It is all over the map. Eclectic is the polite word for it. It really is a journey. We have a clinical medical text on pediatric sleep hygiene, translated from Turkish. Curiously enough, yeah, that was interesting. And it's sitting right next to guided meditations. On we have positive affirmations about becoming a millionaire, which I ask questions about. Oh, we'll get to this. A retelling of Beauty and the Beast. And a massive encyclopedic tour of the solar system. Designed specifically to, I guess, bore you, or are you into slumber? It sounds like a mess, but there is a logic to it. I promise, okay? We're looking at the architecture of sleep. From every possible angle. From the biological baseline, what the machine needs. Galactic lullabies we used to distract ourselves. So the mission today is to figure out how we sleep. Why we struggle to let go and all this strange specific narratives we tell ourselves to trick our brains into shutting down. And for you listening, this isn't just about getting your 8 hours. It's about understanding the mechanism of rest. Why do we need it? And why does imagining a lake or a gas giant or some rich merchant in 18th century France help us get there? Let's start with the stakes we're looking at. This source is just titled 9.pdf. A medical text on sleep hygiene. And it really is. Some pulling punches about what sleep actually is. No, it doesn't. I think a lot of us just think of it as powering down. Right, like putting your laptop to sleep. That's the common misconception. We think of sleep as the absence of wakefulness. Like flipping a light switch. But this text makes it very clear. Sleep is an active neurophysiological process. It's not the brain turning off. It's the brain switching into a different gear. A maintenance gear. It is the primary activity of the developing brain. The stats they cite on newborns really drive this home. They spend 80% of their day asleep. They have to, I mean. Think about what is happening in a newborn's head. The neural connections are being paved, while the eyes are closed. Wow, the source notes that by age 1, a child should ideally be sleeping 10 to 12 hours a night without waking up. That's the baseline for a healthy developing brain. But what really gripped me in this text, and honestly, it scared me a little, was the survival data. Oh yeah. We always hear that rule of thumb. You can survive weeks without food. But only days without water. But where does sleep fit in that hierarchy? It fits right at the top. Uncomfortably close to air and water. The source cites animal studies that are frankly terrifying. How so? Well, food deprivation takes a long time to be fatal. Animals can, catabolize their own body fat and muscle for energy. Sleep deprivation, though, it destroys the organism incredibly fast. How fast are we talking? In the study cited, animals that were deprived of sleep saw their lifespans drop from 2 or 3 years down to just 5 weeks. 5 weeks. And with total sleep deprivation, they died in 2 to 3 weeks. That is faster than starvation. It is, and the text implies it's a systemic failure. Without that maintenance cycle, the biological machine just breaks. The source explicitly states, sleep is as important for survival as food. So if it's that critical of the machine, he breaks with that. Why do we mess it up so badly? The text talks a lot about sleep hygiene. Yes, and I love that term. We understand dental hygiene. Brushing to keep the environment clean. Sleep hygiene is the same. You have to keep the environment clean of contaminants. And the text specifically calls out the enemies of this hygiene in school-age children. Caffeine and screens. Computer games and TV. But we all know screens are bad. Is it just because I like keeps us awake? It's deeper than that. The medical literature points out something specific about memory. It notes that singular excessive exposure to screens especially interactive ones like games directly degrades memory performance. Wait, so it's not just that I'm tired the next day. No, you are just groggy. Your brain actually stops encoding memories properly. Sleep is when the brain takes the temporary files from the day your short-term memory them to the hard drive long-term memory. When you disrupt that process with high dopamine, screen time right before bed, you are physically impairing the save function. So biologically, the machine needs to power down to survive and to learn. That's the hardware requirement, right? But here's the problem. And this is where we pivot to our next source. My brain doesn't care about the biology. My brain is worried about that email I didn't see. Or the weather. Or what you said to someone 5 years ago, exactly. And this is the psychological barrier. We move now from the clinical text to a source titled Surrender Meditation. And another called Guided Sleep Meditation. Let go of anxiety. The core argument here seems to be that the enemy of sleep is control. Or rather, the illusion that we have control. Precisely. We build what the source calls scaffolding around our lives. We plan, we organize, we worry. We act as if we can control the weather, traffic, or other people's opinions. We construct this rigid frame to feel safe. There's this great metaphor in the meditation script where it says, we tremble when there's an earthquake in our lives. Precisely because we're clinging to that scaffold thing. Right? If you're holding on to a rigid structure, and the ground shakes, you get battered, you get bruised. But if you're fluid, if you aren't holding on, you move with it. The reality is the only thing we control is ourselves. And realizing that, really internalizing it. It's terrifying for the anxious mind. Yeah, if you can't control the outcome, how do you relax? The source argues the solution is vulnerability. which feels counterintuitive to me. Usually, if I feel threatened or anxious, I want an armor up. I want less vulnerability. We often think of vulnerability as weakness. But the meditation argues it's just drop. Being the facade. It's admitting you are a small ship on a vast river. You can't row upstream. You can try, but you'll just exhaust yourself and drown. You have to let the current take you. You do. There was a really specific, almost mystical concept brought up in that. That I have to ask you about. The Celtic legend. Did you catch that? I did. That was a fascinating philosophical detour. The speaker mentions an old Celtic legend that says, before birth, every person chooses the specific hardships they will experience. In their lifetime. That is a heavy thought. I chose this dress. It changes the frame entirely. Doesn't it? The idea is that you didn't just stumble into this dress. You chose these challenges because you knew on a soul level that you were capable of overcoming them. So the anxiety isn't a sign that things are going wrong. It's just part of the curriculum, my son. I live for exactly. Yeah, now. Do you have to believe it? So contracts to get a good night's sleep. No, probably not. But look at the psychological utility of it. If you entertain that thought, even just for the 10 minutes before you fall asleep, it allows you to stop fighting. It allows you to say, okay, this is part of the plan. It allows you to surrender. Okay. So let's say I accept that I can't control the universe. I'm floating down the river. But my brain is still buzzing. This is where we get into what I call the mind hacks. We have few sources here. Focusing on chakras and affirmations. This is where we get into the active reprogramming of the subconscious. This is the fake it till you make it portion of the deep dive. The open balanced chakra source. Uses visualization to give the busy mind a job. It focuses on the chakra system. These whirling balls of energy. I loved the specificity here. It's not just a magical light. It's very color-coded. It feels like a diagnostic check for a car. It does you start at the base of the spine. The root red. Yes. This governs self-preservation and the physical world. If you're stressed about money or safety, that's where the blockages is. You visualize that red energy spinning clearly. And you move up, you've got the solar plexus, which is yellow. That's self-esteem. The source says, blockages here make you judgmental or aloof. Which is definitely me when I'm overtired. And then the throat chakra, which is blue. Truth and willpower. And the source makes a fascinating physiological connection here, claiming blockages in the blue energy. And cause actual thyroid or ear issues. Do we have medical evidence for that? In Western medicine, but in terms of somatic therapy, absolutely. Whether you believe in the spiritual energy or not, the act of visualizing these colors, red, orange, yellow, green, pink, go purple, forces the brain to focus on the body. It pulls you out of the abstract anxiety loop of did I pay the bill? And into the physical sensation of your own spine. Speaking of bills, we have to talk about the affirmation source. This was a video titled Affirmations for Health, Wealth, Happiness. It uses what they call the I am loop. This was distinct from the other meditations. The others were about letting go. This one is about inserting new programming. It connects to the concept of scientific prayer. The idea that the conscious mind can give orders to the subconscious. But the list of orders was eclectic, yeah, it starts very spiritual. I am peaceful, I am calm, I am at one, and then suddenly, wham. I am a millionaire, I am wealthy, I am successful. It is a jarring shift, isn't it? It felt less like sleep and more like hype music. For a nap. I mean a shouting, I am a millionaire. My subconscious really gonna help me sleep? Well, it reveals what keeps people up at night. It's not just existential dread, it's bills. Its status, sure, the source oscillates between I am connected to all that is, and I am rich. It's trying to soothe both the soul and the bank account. I am a born leader, I am enter. And the repetition is the key. The repetition is the key, it's hypnotic. I am, I am, I am. It creates a rhythm that eventually bores the logic center of the brain into submission. You stop arguing with the statement, I am a millionaire. And just let the sound wash over you. It's about rhythm, not truth. If the I am a millionaire loop doesn't work, and let's be honest, for some of us that might just trigger more anxiety, right? There was one more visualization technique that I found. Really powerful. The lake visualization. From the anxiety meditation, this is beautiful. It's a guided imagery scenario. You are walking into a peaceful lake at dusk. But you don't just look at it, you enter at angles. Knees, hips. The source describes diving headfirst into the glossy surface. And here's the crucial metaphor. The water washes away the fearful thoughts. You visualize your worries physically. Detaching from you, sinking to the lake. Floor, oh that's nice. And the sources the natural world takes them in and transforms them. It's that idea of safety. Again, you aren't just ignoring the bad thoughts. You are giving them to the lake. You don't have to carry them anymore. Precisely, it externalizes the burden, but sometimes even that isn't enough. Sometimes the mind is too active for visualization. It needs data. It needs something massive to chew on, yes. And that brings us to my favorite source in this stack. The Sleep Space Cruise. By the French Whisper. This is ASMR, but it's essentially a college-level astronomy lecture. Delivered in a whisper, it is the intellectual lullaby. And the pivot here is fascinating. Instead of looking inward at your you look outward at the terrifying vastness of the solar system. The source takes us on a tour from Mercury to Pluto. And the facts are just heavy. Let's talk about Mercury. Mercury is a strange little rock. The source notes it is 70% metal, mostly iron. And there's a theory presented that it used to be much larger. Right, the collision theory, yes. The idea is that a massive collision stripped away its rocky mantle, or perhaps the early sun was so hot it literally vaporized the rock atmosphere. Leaving just this iron core. And the time distortion of Mercury is wild. A day lasts 2 years, that's due to spin orbit resonance. Can we translate that, because that sounds like Star Trek tech? Think of it like a dancer. Imagine a dancer spinning on their toes. But they are spinning so slowly that they only face the audience. Once every 2 years, okay? Mercury rotates on its axis incredibly. slowly, compared to how fast it whips around the sun. So one day of sunlight covers 2 years of orbital history. Then we move to Venus. And if Mercury's weird, Venus is a nightmare. Atmosphere. Nightmare. The source describes the atmosphere as a fluid. What does that actually mean? It's a state of matter that we don't really see. It means that carbon dioxide is under such immense pressure and heat that it's neither gas nor liquid. Wow. It flows like a liquid, you could swim in it. But it expands to fill space like a gas. In the source, cheerfully notes, this would crush and burn a human. Instantly. Very relaxing. Isn't it? That's the funny part. This is a sleep aid. Here is a supercritical fluid that will crush you. Sweet dreams. But there is a distance to it. It's so far away, so alien. That it feels safe. It's a problem you don't have to solve, we cruise past. What the source calls the snow line. This was a new concept for me. It's a crucial boundary in the solar system. Think of a campfire. Close to the fire, water vapor rises. But if you walk far enough away, eventually, it's cold enough for that water vapor to freeze. Into solid ice grains. And that distance is the snow line, right? And that's why Jupiter exists. Because ice was solid out there. The early Jupiter could accumulate. massive amounts of it, growing large enough to capture gas and become a giant. Where is inside the snow line where it's hot? You just get rocks like Earth and Mars. Exactly. And once we get to Jupiter, we have to talk about the moon. This is the part that really stuck with me. The variety is staggering. You have Io, which is the most geologically active body in the solar system. "400 active volcanoes, and why?" Because Jupiter's pulling it, essentially. It's called tidal heating. The gravity of Jupiter is so immense that as I orbit, it gets physically stretched and squeezed. Like a rubber stress ball. I see if you squeeze a rubber ball fast enough, it gets hot. Jupiter squeezes Io so hard that the rock inside melts into magma. Then you have Europa, which is the opposite. A smooth surface of ice, potentially floating over 100-kilometer deep ocean. And Titan, Saturn's moon. The only other body with liquid on the surface. But it's not water, it's liquid methane and nothing. And it has cryovolcanoes that erupt. Ammonia or water ice. And finally, Ipetus. The walnut moon. Shaped like a walnut because of a massive ridge at the equator. One side is dark as charcoal, one side is white as snow. The source just piles these facts on you. It's dense information, but it's delivered in a whisper. It forces the brain to disengage from to lock the door to How does a cryovolcano work? It humbles your worries. Your electric bill seems pretty small compared to a methane lake on Titan. Exactly, it scales you down. So we've tried biology, meditation, money mantras. And space facts. But there was one last method in our stack, yeah. The oldest method of all. A bedtime story, the comfort of narrative. Our source here is a retelling of Beauty and the Beast. But this isn't the Disney version. This is closer to the original French tale. It feels much more grounded in reality. The source introduces us to Lauren. A merchant who loses his fortune. He has a daughter, Camille. And the inciting incident is so mundane. The wrong gets lost in a storm. Finds a mysterious chateau. Eats a dinner that isn't his, and then the fatal mistake. He steals pink roses for Camille. That's what triggers the beast, or Antoine. Antoine. And the description of him is great, oh Will. Facial hair and a wolf-like growl. He demands, pay his debt or send a daughter. So Camille goes. And this is where the sleepy part comes in. The store resolves tension. Camille expects a monster, but Antoine is. Well, he's an intellectual. He isn't just roaring. And breaking furniture, he quotes Dick. He quotes Socrates. Awareness of ignorance is the beginning of wisdom. He quotes Shakespeare, he's a nerd, he is. The beast is essentially a lonely philosopher trapped in a scary body. That shifts the whole dynamic. It makes him safe for the listener. It does, and the resolution in this version was really interesting. There's no magical swirling light. Camille takes Antoine to her sister's wedding. The villagers mock him. And Camille defends him. She stands up for him. She declares him better. And in that moment, the source says she sees him transform. But it notes, and I think this is crucial, it wasn't necessarily magic. Her perception shifted. The curse broke because she stopped seeing a monster and saw the man. And they live happily ever after in the library, which, for a sleep story, is the perfect ending. It takes the listener from financial anxiety law debts to a safe, quiet library with a warm flame. It lands you in a place of absolute safety. And really, isn't that the thread? Connecting all of these, it is if you look at the stack. The Turkish medical text, emphasizing a clean and environment. The meditation asking you to surrender control. The visualization of the lake. The destruction of the space. Facts, the resolution of the fairy tale. The goal is identical, safety. We can only sleep when the tiger is not at the door. In the modern world, the tiger is inside our heads. It's the anxiety, the ambition, the I am. Are you thoughts? Right. We engage these disparate sources. Chakras, cryovolcanoes, fairy tales. To trick our brains into feeling safe enough to turn off the surveillance. System. We are tricking the biological imperative to kick in. By using psychological sleight of hand, perfectly put. So whether you are visualizing, a red ball of energy at the base of your spine, or imagining the crushing atmosphere of Venus, the goal is to let go. I think you said there was one final thought. From that space cruise source, yes, a paradox. That I found particularly provocative, especially for sleep aid. The paradox of the void. We use the vast hostile radiation field. Emptiness of space to feel cozy in our beds. The source lingers on the radiation of Jupiter. The freezing darkness of Titan. It's objectively terrifying. But perhaps looking at the infinite makes our own worries feel small enough to sleep next to you. The universe is huge and dangerous, and you are small and warm in your bed, and sometimes that contrast is the only thing that brings peace. That is a comforting thought. Sleep well, everyone. And safe travels, whether to the lake or to Saturn.